In the series of videos which deal with data for policy, this one is the one that focuses on an application of what has been explained in the two other videos. And the application is indicators. And indicators are in a certain way just statistics, but they are special statistics, special statistical vehicles. It is surprising that while indicators are all over our daily life, in sports, in management, in politics, we cannot find so many textbooks for indicators on the bookshelf of statistical textbooks. So there is relatively little theory about indicators, and this video gives an introduction into some of the components and may also explain why the gap of theory is still there. First question is index the same as indicator? Or can we distinguish what is an index and what is an indicator? If we start from the first entry point in Wikipedia, then it's not very clear, because Wikipedia comes more or less with the same description from Latin index, a discoverer, informer, spy of things, an indicator, the forefinger, and so forth. And the indicator is more or less the same text, from late Latin indicator, one who points out, from Latin indico, by surface analysis, indicate, see, indicate. So this does not help us very far. If we look into statistical textbooks for indicators, it helps a little bit. For example, it says in statistics, index represents historically a very generic term applied with multiple meanings. Not yet clear, at least not to me. Then the example, which is then looking at the so-called price index, is much more clear. This is a definition from Irving Fisher in the 1920s. An index number of prices shows the average percentage change of prices from one point of time to another, where the average is calculated using a weight. For example, an arithmetic mean. This seems to be clear to me. And for indicator, we find also a bit more clear definition in the indicator book of Filomena Magino. She says, in statistics, it represents indirect metrics of economic or social phenomena, not directly measurable. This seems to be a good point, not directly measurable. An indicator is not simple, crude statistical information, but represents a quantification connected to a conceptual model aimed at describing aspects of reality. So, if we look at this definition, I think it helps already a lot, because it includes the ingredients of what, at least I would say, is typical for an indicator. It's not just a statistical information, not a crude statistical information. First. Secondly, there is some theoretical concept behind. And thirdly, the concept cannot help to directly measure a term which is in our mind in qualitative terms, and to translate this in a kind of metric, so it cannot be directly measured. So we have a kind of placeholder function of an indicator for something which is complex, and these are then terms like poverty, employment, growth, prosperity. So terms from the sphere of social or economic theories or applications, which are very important, but it's not possible to directly measure them. So we have to follow a quantification process in the first step to define this term in qualitative terms, and then to find the best possible approximation through a metric, and this metric then is leading to an indicator. So for the sake of simplicity, I would personally start with a distinction, which is that an index is determined by its design and construction, and an indicator is determined by its purpose and relevance. That means that an index can be used as an indicator, and an indicator can have the form of an index, not necessarily. So there is a huge overlap between the two. Now, if you want to say what is a good indicator, what are the criteria, this might be a first checklist. I will come back later with a little bit more, but as a first checklist, I would look at, in the first place, as for the indicator to be relevant. This is super important. So an indicator normally is a statistical figure, a statistical information, which is directly one-to-one related to one type of use. And this is not the normal case for all other statistics. Normally, statistics from statistical institutions, they are multi-purpose. But an indicator is designed for one user for one use. And this makes it so specific. And also the relationship between this number and the use is a special one. So the relevance then means it has to capture the essence of the issue at hand, a clear message, and it must be effective by resonating with their intended audience, which may comprise multiple groups. So there is a case of acceptance that the audience which is using this indicator is happy with its construction. Credibility, there must be a solid scientific basis, a methodology, a concept, and of course it must be founded on reliable data sources. It must be reproducible, robust, and sensitive. Legitimacy leads to the follow-up from, let's say, the user side. So an obligation to be transparent with regard to data sources and procedures and methods. Also quite important, the design of the indicator in terms of coverage and methodology is important to be a consequence of a procedure which is participatory, where those who then work with the consequence, the indicator itself, those are already involved in the selection, choice, and design of the indicator. For the factory statistics, so statistical institutes, we have the 4 process steps: the design process at 12 o'clock, the production lines, the factory itself at 3, the communication process at 6 o'clock, and the use for knowledge creation decision making at 9 o'clock. And here it is important that we have separated spheres for users and producers. On the side of the production for the producers, the statisticians, and on the side of the use and knowledge creation for the users. But in the middle, we have a shared responsibility and procedures, processes, where indicators have to be designed in the best way possible and communicated in the best way possible. and in the design, methodology, data sources, and wishes from the user side and user information needs have to be brought together and to be balanced out so as to find the best possible solution. A case which can explain a little bit the difficulty with indicators, where all types of indicators are more or less compressed into something which is well known in the world of universities, is the university rankings. The question from my side is, do we use rankings as a lazy proxy for quality? And here, for example, this is a snapshot from the press release of the LMU when the rankings, the THE rankings, were published, and the LMU said, well, we are so proud that we have improved our rank. We are now number 34 of all the universities around the globe. A second one is La Sapienza Università di Roma. They have more or less at the same day or in the same week also issued a press release and said, well, we are so happy that we have the rank 170 in the classification of international universities. So this is how it is used. Now the question is, how does this correspond to the different world university rankings? And if we look at them, we see, for example, here that the development in the world university rankings, the THE ranking, Times Higher Education ranking, from 2024 to 2026, 2 years, is that the LMU has improved by 4, and the technical university also but by 3. And if we compare this with the ranks given in other university rankings, the Shanghai ranking, Munich 42, the TUM 45, and Sapienza University somewhere in the group of 101 to 150. QS, the World University Rankings, there the TUM comes with 22, LMU 58, and Sapienza 128. And the last one is the Leiden ranking. There Sapienza ranks better than the two universities from the two German universities from Munich. So this will say, if we have all these rankings side by side, then it depends very much on what you expect from a kind of ranking, because their construction and their design and what kind of message they have, which kind of weighting scheme they use, is very, very different. So if you are a student coming from a foreign country and you are looking for the best university for you, for your discipline and for your wallet, it might be different. It might be better to use another ranking than the user who wants to have a good result for the acquisition of finances for research in the international competition. The main point that I want to make is, however, it is very interesting to see the contrast between the pretended precision of these of these rankings altogether, and the use which is more or less making use of the rankings as if they were metrical outcomes and not more or less ordinal orders of universities. So in the use side of these rankings, I see more a problem than in their construction. Now, the criticism of these rankings is picked up in also a kind of more broad sets, the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, for example, or INorms. They say there is a pressing need to improve the ways in which output of scientific research is estimated by funding agencies and so forth. So there is a kind of meta ranking, not a meta ranking, but a kind of quality approval of all the rankings altogether, and an advice how to use them, and also a request to the rankings themselves to be as transparent as possible, and to contextualize and to be careful with the messages so that they are not overused from the side of users. Lessons learned. I think the indicators, if we look at different levels of indicators, then we can see, starting from simple ones to very, very high aggregated ones, that the compression and the filtering and the focus on some signals while reducing the, let's say, unnecessary noise can lead to very high aggregated numbers. So if we start with single indicators or indices, it's relatively straightforward normally. But then we can put them together into a kind of set of indicators with multivariate collection of those outcomes. The scoreboard and dashboard would go even one step further. The scoreboard means we try to use an indicator set in such a way as a pilot in an aircraft. So we select a relatively small number of indicators and put them into visible instruments, so to say, like the pilot. And these instruments, they have some thresholds on the upper and the lower limit. So goals and targets and thresholds are used in order to indicate a kind of band within which the indicator behaves in, let's say, a normal way, or it's approximating a goal and a target and so forth. This is a scoreboard. A synthetic indicator is produced in a way where different variables for one individual, this could be one household or one enterprise, for example, are matched and synthesized so as to create a new aggregated indicator from the different variables. So here the synthesis is then produced at the individual level. Opposite to that, the composite indicator is something where the aggregation and the matching takes place at the aggregate level. So you have different aggregated indicators and you put them together. You use weighting schemes and then you calculate an overall indicators, as we have seen in the university rankings. And finally then, once you have calculated this composite indicator, the ranking is then using the outcome in order to put all these together into an order and in numbers of ranks. One can criticize the composite indicators, and here comes a quote of the report from Stiglitz and Fitoussi on behalf of the French government a couple of years ago. And what they say is the second argument is a general criticism that is frequently addressed at composite indicators. The arbitrary character of the procedures used to weight their various components. So it's a normative setting when you use weights, and this normative setting leads to also some kind of dependency of the outcome of the composite indicator from the normative setting. The problem is not that these weighting procedures are hidden, non-transparent or non-replicable. They are often very explicitly presented. The problem is rather that their normative implications are seldom made explicit or justified. And then comes a very strong sentence. They say, for example, no single metric will ever provide a good measure of the health of a country. So all attempts to replace the gross domestic product, for example, by something of a corrected gross domestic product have so far failed. And the report comes to the conclusion, if we are super ambitious, the best we could then produce is a kind of dashboard, so that we have the variables of different aspects of life, for example, of well-being, of the society, of progress, put into higher aggregates, but not the total number of everything put together in one number. This means if we look at the hierarchy of indicator types, there is a line. And this line demarcates more or less the world of official statistics. Up to this line, official statistics normally would have the mandate and the possibilities to produce indicators, even indicator dashboards and scoreboards. But when it comes to synthesis of indicators, it becomes already difficult because of the weightings, and this is even more the case for composite indicators and rankings. Now, as I said at the beginning, the theoretical frame, the conceptual frame, should look at different aspects of the indicators. This is not here the place to elaborate a full textbook, but at least one could go to and look to the chapters of a textbook. So we should have a theoretical chapter where we say, okay, what is the definition of phenomena and selection of variables? How is it done? It should be done by a theory or based on a theory in qualitative terms. And the definition of the relevant survey systems should also be part of a theory, then a statistical theory or a geostatistical theory or something like that. Empirically, of course, it is important that the data sources follow the best possible data quality that is necessary for that respective indicator. Aggregation methods, they are reducing complexity and they leave out information. This is a matter of fact. And what we could do, however, is to use statistical methods to analyze multivariate data sets so that we make use in the best way possible of all statistical analytical tools, dimensional analysis, and that we do alignment of different scales in such a way that we are free of methodological mistakes and errors. And this in particular is important for the fact when we introduced averaging and weighing. Political, of course, this is another story than the first three ones, because politically the indicator will play a very important role. So if you take, for example, the price index, then the price index is produced by statistical offices for the use of central banks, their central banks, and their monetary policy. So there is a one-to-one relationship, and this can be very helpful, but it can also include risks, if the messages of the indicators are not to the liking of the political users, it might create political pressure, and this needs to be avoided by means of adequate governance, so to protect the institutions who are producing the indicators. The use of goals and target values, like for example in the case of sustainable development goals, is quite popular. Nevertheless, it should be done in such a way that the dialogue between those who are producing the indicators and those who are producing the target values, they do this in such a stepwise approach that we first have the quantification of the indicator and then set the target. If we did this the other way around and we have a quantitative target and are searching then for the corresponding indicators, it might lead to problems. Communication. Of course, communication is absolutely crucial, and it must be done that the communication of the indicator is fit for purpose for the community that is interested in the use of the indicator. And finally, governance, I already mentioned. It's absolutely basic that we have a governance that is on both sides, giving the right frame for the producers so that they can and do produce the best possible quality. This is their mandate, their obligation, but also their right. And on the user side, that they know what is their responsibility and what is out of their reach, so that statistical offices and statistical producers are at arm's length to the political user side. That's it from my side. Merci bien, and thank you very much.